Look around you. Everything you see, this desk, your phone, the world outside your window, seems obviously real and physical, right? Well, what if I told you that one of history's greatest philosophers proved that nothing you see actually exists as physical matter? George Berkeley, an 18th century thinker, developed a theory so mind-bending that even modern physics is starting to catch up to his ideas. Today, we're going to explore why everything you believe about reality might be completely wrong. When Berkeley first proposed his ideas at Trinity College, Dublin, he was met with ridicule. Students would walk through doors very slowly, joking that they needed to make sure the door existed. One critic even claimed to refute Berkeley by simply kicking a stone. But Berkeley's ideas weren't just philosophical games. They tackled the fundamental nature of human experience and consciousness. If he was right, it would mean that science, religion, and our entire understanding of reality needed to be completely reimagined. And if he was wrong, then we'd have to explain some very strange phenomena that modern quantum physics is still struggling with today. Think about the last time you watched The Matrix. Remember how Neo discovered that his entire world was just information being fed to his brain? Berkeley figured this out 300 years before the movie came out. But he went even further. He said that there's no difference between the world you see and your experience of seeing it. They're the same thing. Take that tree outside your window. You think it's a solid object made of matter, right? But what exactly are you experiencing? Color, that's in your mind. The texture of bark, that's a sensation in your mind. The sound of leaves, that's in your mind too. Strip away everything that's in your mind, and what's left? Nothing. This is where Berkeley's famous question comes in. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Most people think this is just a silly riddle, but it's actually a deep insight into reality. Berkeley would say no sound, no tree, no forest, not until someone experiences it. Here's the wild part. Modern science is starting to agree with him. When scientists look at the quantum level, the tiny building blocks of reality, they find that particles don't have definite properties until they're observed. It's not just that we don't know their properties. They literally don't have any until something interacts with them. Think about virtual reality for a minute. When you're in VR, your brain creates a completely convincing world from pure information. No physical objects required. Berkeley's big idea was that regular reality works the same way. Your brain isn't receiving information about physical objects. It's creating your entire experience of reality from scratch. And he could prove it. Close your eyes and imagine an apple. Now open them and look at a real apple. The only difference is that you can't control the real apple the way you can control your imagined one. But both apples only exist as experiences in your mind. This isn't just philosophy. It's changing how we understand everything. Ever wonder why two people can look at the same situation and see completely different things? Or why virtual reality can feel just as real as regular reality? Or why quantum computers work the way they do? Berkeley's ideas explain all of this. We're not passive observers of a physical world. We're active creators of our reality. And once you understand this, nothing looks the same again. But if nothing is physical and everything is in the mind, why don't things disappear when we stop looking at them? Why can't we change reality just by thinking about it? That's where things get really interesting. And it leads us to an even stranger truth about the nature of reality itself. Think about your last dream. In it, everything felt real. The people, the places, the objects. You could touch things, move around, interact with the world. But when you woke up, you realized none of it was physical. It was all in your mind. Berkeley's revolutionary idea was simple but shocking. Our waking life works exactly the same way. Let me prove it to you right now. Scientists tell us that this physical world is made of atoms. But have you ever seen an atom? Not a picture or a model. The actual thing. No one has. We can measure their effects, but we've never directly experienced atoms themselves. The same goes for every other physical thing scientists talk about. Electrons, quarks, forces, fields. They're all just ideas we use to explain our experiences. We've never actually touched or seen the physical matter that supposedly makes up reality. Here's a mind-bending experiment Berkeley used. Pick up any object near you. Feel its weight, its texture, its temperature. Now ask yourself, what exactly are you experiencing? The weight? That's just a sensation in your muscles and joints. The texture, just signals from your fingertips to your brain. The temperature, more nerve signals. The color, that's your brain's interpretation of light waves. Every single thing you know about this object is a mental experience. Try to point to something, anything, about it that isn't in your mind. You can't. But surely the object must exist independently of our minds, right? That's what everyone assumes, but Berkeley spotted a fatal flaw in this thinking. We can never check if objects exist outside our minds, because the moment we try to check, we're back to experiencing things with our minds. It's like trying to see what's behind your own head by turning around. It's impossible in principle. This explains so many weird things about human experience. Ever wonder why two people can argue about the color of a dress in a photo? Or why the same room can feel huge to a child but tiny to an adult? Or why time seems to slow down during intense experiences? If reality is physical and objective, none of this makes sense. But if reality is mental, if your mind is literally creating your world, then these experiences are exactly what we'd expect. Modern neuroscience backs this up in a fascinating way. When scientists study the brain, they find that what we see isn't a direct recording of the outside world. Your brain receives a tiny amount of information through your senses and then creates a complete reality using its expectations and past experiences. That's why optical illusions work. They exploit the fact that your mind is actively constructing reality, not passively receiving it. Think about how your phone screen works. You think you're seeing physical objects on it, but you're actually seeing millions of tiny lights creating an illusion. Berkeley would say all of reality works this way. It's not made of physical stuff. It's made of experiences. The only difference is that we can't find the screen our reality is playing on, because we're part of the display. But this leads us to a huge question. If everything is in our minds, why can't we just change reality by thinking differently? Why does the world seem to follow fixed laws? To answer this, Berkeley had to propose something even more radical, an idea that would connect individual minds to a vast, universal consciousness. If everything exists only in minds, we hit a huge problem. What happens to things when no one's looking at them? Your coffee mug doesn't vanish when you leave the room. The stars don't disappear during the day when we can't see them. Berkeley knew this was the biggest challenge to his theory, and his solution was absolutely wild. Everything is always being observed, because the entire universe exists within an infinite mind, what we might call God. Now, before you roll your eyes, hear this out because it gets fascinating. Berkeley wasn't making a religious argument. He was solving a logical problem. If things exist only when perceived, but things clearly continue existing when no human is perceiving them, then logically there must be a universal perceiver. Think of it like a cosmic video game server that keeps running even when no players are in a particular area. Modern physics accidentally proved Berkeley might be onto something. In quantum mechanics, particles exist in multiple possible states until they're observed. This is called the measurement problem, and it's one of the biggest mysteries in science. Some physicists, like John Wheeler, suggested that consciousness itself might be fundamental to reality, exactly what Berkeley claimed centuries ago. Let me blow your mind even further. Ever heard of the simulation hypothesis? The idea that we might be living in a computer simulation? Berkeley's model fits perfectly with this. The divine mind he talked about could just as easily be a cosmic supercomputer running our reality. The laws of physics would be like the program's code, and our individual minds would be like local instances of consciousness within the larger system. This isn't just philosophy. It has real implications. If reality is mental rather than physical, consciousness isn't produced by brains. Instead, brains might be more like receivers tuning into consciousness, like radios picking up a signal. This explains near-death experiences, where consciousness continues even when the brain isn't working. It might even explain quantum entanglement, what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, because in a mental universe, everything is already connected through the universal mind. But here's where things get really practical. If all reality exists in mind, and our minds are connected to a universal mind, then consciousness isn't just an accident of evolution. It's the fundamental stuff of reality itself. This completely changes how we think about artificial intelligence, about human potential, about the nature of death, and about our place in the cosmos. Speaking of potential, this understanding of reality opens up some mind-bending possibilities about what humans might actually be capable of. If everything is mental rather than physical, what does this mean for your daily life? A lot more than you might think. Remember the movie Limitless, where Bradley Cooper's character unlocks the full potential of his mind? Berkeley would say we're all living in a self-imposed limitless-style limitation simply because we believe in a physical world that holds us back. Let's talk about something concrete: the placebo effect. Doctors give patients sugar pills, tell them it's medicine, and they actually get better. Not just in their minds, their bodies physically change. They show real, measurable improvements in everything from pain levels to immune system responses. In a purely physical world, this makes no sense. But in Berkeley's mental world, of course your beliefs can change your reality. Beliefs are what reality is made of. This isn't just about healing. Athletes use visualization techniques to improve their performance. Studies show that people who just imagine working out can gain muscle strength. Monks in Tibet can control their body temperature through meditation. These aren't magic tricks. They're demonstrations of how consciousness shapes reality at its most fundamental level. Here's where modern technology comes in. Virtual and augmented reality are proving Berkeley right in a way he could never have imagined. When you're in VR, your brain creates a completely convincing world from pure information. Your body responds as if it's real. You can feel stress, excitement, even physical sensations that don't physically exist. Companies like Neuralink are working on brain-computer interfaces that will blur the line between mental and physical even further. The latest research in neuroscience shows that your brain actually predicts reality rather than perceives it. It creates a model of what it expects to see, then updates that model based on sensory input. This means you're already living in a kind of virtual reality created by your mind. The only difference is that this VR follows rules you deeply believe in, like the laws of physics. But here's the real kicker. If Berkeley is right, the laws of physics aren't barriers to what's possible. They're more like widely shared habits of consciousness. This might explain phenomena that science struggles with, like documented cases of supernatural strength under stress, inexplicable medical recoveries, or those rare moments when people seem to transcend ordinary physical limitations. This opens up some incredible possibilities for the future of human experience, and it leads us to the biggest question of all. We've reached the point where Berkeley's centuries-old ideas and cutting-edge science are starting to say the same thing. Reality isn't what we thought it was. Think about how quantum computers work. They solve problems by manipulating particles that exist in multiple states simultaneously. This only makes sense if reality is more like a thought than a thing. But let's get really practical. What does this mean for your life right now? First, your beliefs about what's possible literally shape what's possible for you. When Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile in 1954, everyone said it was impossible. After he did it, dozens of others followed within just a few years. The only thing that changed was people's beliefs about what was possible. The latest research in neuroplasticity shows something amazing. Your brain physically rewires itself based on what you believe and experience. Stroke victims who visualize moving their paralyzed limbs can regain movement. People with OCD can literally change their brain structure through mindfulness. If Berkeley was right, this makes perfect sense. Your mental experience is the primary reality, and the physical world follows from that. Silicon Valley executives are already using these insights. They're combining ancient meditation techniques with modern technology to enhance human potential. Companies are developing consciousness tech that uses the principles of mental reality to achieve what used to seem impossible. We're entering an age where the line between imagination and reality is starting to blur. But here's the ultimate implication. If Berkeley was right, consciousness isn't something that emerged from a dead material universe. Instead, consciousness is the fundamental reality from which everything else emerges. This means you're not just an observer of the universe. You're an active participant in creating it. Every thought, every belief, every expectation is literally shaping the reality you experience. Remember how we started, looking at ordinary objects and assuming they were physical things? Now you know the truth is far stranger and more exciting. You're not living in a physical universe that somehow produced consciousness. You're living in consciousness itself. creating your experience moment by moment. The world isn't happening to you, it's happening through you. This isn't just philosophy anymore. It's the cutting edge of human potential. As we develop new technologies and gain deeper understanding of consciousness, we're approaching a revolution in what it means to be human. The question isn't whether Berkeley was right. It's what we'll do with this knowledge now that science is catching up to what he discovered 3 centuries ago. After all, if reality is mental rather than physical, then the only real limits are the ones we believe in, and that changes everything.